Yeah, it's funny because I share this with my wife all the time is that, you know, my family that I grew up in, my family was so different than myself.
Mm.
So I was always really good at connecting with people because I tell people if I was able to connect with my family, then I can connect with anyone because we were just on totally different wavelengths, right? And so, I mean, speaking is just communicating, right? And we're communicating something every single day. So when someone's like, hey, I'm not a speaker, I don't speak, you're speaking to your friends, you're on Zoom calls if you're in like a business or a sales setting. You know, we're speaking and communicating now with on podcasts. You're communicating your story, you're communicating who are you, like what do you do. We're communicating all the time. And then a communication on like a speaker role is just that in front of an audience, right? And sometimes we may do that with a group of our friends when we're communicating. So it's one of those things where it's like communicating to the people around us. And here are some things, like some practical strategies that people can use today to become better and effective communicators.
Yeah, give me a framework for
Yeah,
being a better communicator and a better speaker.
So one of the things that there's a couple things that people can do, but one of the best things that taught me is that when someone gets up on stage, they're up in their head. They're like thinking about what to say, what they shouldn't say, and they're trying to forget or they're trying to remember what they should say, and then they forget the lines and they stumble, right? Every speaker will do this at first, where really you really want to get from your heart. You really want to speak from your heart, and you're not thinking about the words you're saying. You just get into a flow state, and you're just expressing and going with the flow with what the person asks you or the amount of time that you have on stage. But one of the things that people can do is make eye contact with every single person in the room. And this is a little subtle adjustment that someone can make, and try it when you're out with a group of friends. Next time you're out with a group of friends, a lot of people, when they speak, they will speak not making eye contact with you. They'll pick a fixated piece on the ground or they'll look into the distance. But what happens is they're lacking that connection. So what you want to do and what you want to practice on is locking eye contact with every single person that I'm speaking to. Because what happens is you're not focused on the words. I'm focused on that connection. And then you want to continue speaking because now I've made the connection. I'm not thinking about what I'm saying and I'm flowing with the audience. I'm flowing in the energy. And that's why when you see really great speakers like a Tony Robbins, and I don't know if you're familiar with Garrett White, he does this really well.
He's great. And you feel like they're talking to you at some points during the talk.
Right. And he makes a connection with one person, but the whole room feels it,
Yeah.
right? And that's a very powerful speaker because they made that connection. And so that's one really cool tactic that you can use is make eye contact because that's how you feel connected with the audience. Another thing to do is tonality and tempo, just like in sales or communication. And I didn't know this because I used to start off, I was excited all the time, but I was monotone. So I was excited, but I had this tone that was up here all the time. I was like, yeah, let's do this, da 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 da. But like that's monotone.
Better than the opposite.
Right. And and then you have those boring history teachers that are like, open your book to page 57, like monotone like this, where really good speakers, they change their tempo.
Yeah.
They pause, they change their tonality, they get high, they get low, and they take you on a journey. So that's another thing to look at is adjust your tonality and speed when you're speaking because it keeps people engaged.
That's hard to do. That's easier said than done. And I know I've seen great speakers do this and use it as a weapon, and it makes them so much more enticing to watch and to follow along with.
Right.
But how do you develop that? Is that something you work with a coach on?
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, the best speakers are sharing from their heart, right? Like if I'm sharing a story with a friend, I'm not going to think about what happened in the story because I know the story, right? So it does take preparation, but some of the things that people should practice is what's their story? Like, you know, especially if you're going on a podcast, it's like, who are you? Like, what's your story? You should have that 1 to 3 minute soundbite practice. You should incorporate it you should practice it to a point where you can incorporate your personality, you make some jokes, and you're not remembering it. You know it because it's a part of you. So there's a part of that. And then also just having some core values and like priorities in your life, you can then kind of use that as ways to answer questions no matter what you tell. Tell me, one of my core values is communication, right? So, you know, if someone asks me a question, I will always tie it back to some of these core values that I have where how to become a more effective communicator, and you can tailor it to the audience that you're speaking to.
Yeah. As far as tonality goes too, it's probably like when you speak from the heart,
right?
Assuming that you're an effective communicator,
Right.
then it's probably going to flow. When you're having a normal conversation, I'm not always up here.
Right.
I'm using pauses. I'm talking low. I'm talking high when needed to be, to exaggerate points.
And here's the thing too, is there's like a statistic, and everyone like butchers this, so I don't want to butcher it either, because there's so many stats on there.
Statistics.
But there's like there's statistics out there that say like 90% of communication is actually nonverbal. Right. So you have your body language, you have your nonverbal communication, and 10% is actual the words that you say. So this is another thing I work with speakers on, is their body language. So just to give you an example, one of the things that people will do, they'll be like, by a show of hands, how many are business owners in this room, right? Instead of saying by a show of hands, you just say, how many of you are business owners in the room? So by eliminating words and by just using my body language, I'm saying that with my body. And so then people will raise their hands. So that's just a subtle technique, but you're now future pacing. Now this is some like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which Tony Robbins is a master at too. You got your neural, you have your linguistic, and then you have your programming, which is your body language.
What is neuro-linguistic programming?
Yeah, so
everyone hears that term thrown around a lot. Define it and understand it.
Yeah, so neuro is like your mind, linguistics like your words, and programming is like your body. So Tony Robbins is a master at this, of like getting your mind to align with your words to align with your body. Right? Because if we have thoughts and we say words that don't align with our actions, there's a cognitive dissonance. There's friction, and that's when stress happens, right? But if we can align our mind, our words, and our body, we become like this unstoppable force.
So the program is programming your mind, words, and body to work in sync with each other.
Right, 100%. Yeah, and then, the highest level is like hypnosis, because what they're doing is they're telling you your thoughts of what to think. They're telling you what to say, and they're then programming your body. So now they're actually hypnotizing you.
You're doing it to somebody else.
Right. And that's essentially what a good speaker does on stage. You know, he knows the mindset. He has the right mindset. He has the right words to say, and he has his body language. So now everything he says, he or she says, flows. So that me as an audience, I'm like engaged. I'm intrigued. I'm engaged. And then if he's putting his hand up, I'm engaging. And then when they make an offer at the end, most people are going to buy, because at that point they already know, like, and trust you, and they've built so much rapport with you throughout the whole entire presentation.
Right.
At the end, if you offer me something, I feel aligned with your values, your beliefs, everything that you said to this point, I'm going to want to do business with you, right? And so those are other things to look at with the body language, the tonality.